Right. You want this told like a real American sitting on a porch, laying it all out in one unbroken flow. So here's how it really went down. You ever have one of those mornings where you think, man, the hardest thing I gotta do today is pick between fixing the dock or patching up the kayak shed? Yeah, me too. That was me, not so long ago, barefoot on my porch, sipping coffee while the sun cut through the pines along Hemlock Basin, air thick with that sweet wet cedar smell you only get in the Georgia spring. My dog was chasing squirrels, I was half awake, and the biggest problem on my mind was whether I'd need to drive into town for sandpaper. Then I saw the paper under my windshield. I figured it was some roofing ad, maybe a church bake sale, nothing important. But as I got closer, bam, big bold letters. Notice of violation, Hemlock Ridge, HOA. I froze. Let me back up a sec. I'm not in Hemlock Ridge. I've never been in Hemlock Ridge. My cabin sits on land my grandfather bought right after the war, back when the lake was just a mud hole full of beavers and old beer cans. The deed, yeah, the original one, hangs inside, right next to Granddad's photo with his homemade rowboat. So you can imagine how fast my blood ran cold when I read $19,000 fine for unauthorized use of a shared natural resource. They called it my lake, said my canoe didn't meet community environmental standards, and, get this, I was denying equitable access to the water. Pay up in 10 business days, or they'd call the law and review my ownership. You know what I mean? I just stood there, blinking, then snorted so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. This had to be a joke, a typo maybe. But then I saw the signature at the bottom, Judith Stern, HOA president. Now Judith, she's got a memory like an elephant and a grudge to match. A couple summers back, she tried to tie up her pontoon boat on my shore. I told her, ma'am, this is private property. Not yours, not the HOA's, not a community pool. She called it unneighborly. I called it trespassing. Guess she hadn't let it go. So I stomped inside, poured out my coffee, and yanked out my property folder. 27 pages, deeds, topo maps, water rights, and a county map from 43 with our name in fat red ink. Called up the number on the letter, laid it out for their chipper office gal. She tried to sound tough, quoting article this and section that. I cut her off. Look, I own the lake, the ground, the water, the whole deal. She sighed, said their records disagreed. I told her their records belonged in the trash. Hung up, didn't even bother slamming the phone. By lunchtime, I'd scanned everything, 3 copies, digital backups. Put up, private lake, no access signs on the trails that snaked in from Hemlock Ridge. Felt like overkill. But hey, when people start pretending they own your lake, it never ends at paperwork. Next morning, I'm hammering shingles on the shed, and a sheriff's cruiser rolls up, 2 deputies, straight out of Central Casting. They tell me the HOA reported me for blocking a public waterway. I invite him in, pour bottled water, lay out my paperwork like I'm teaching a class. The older guy finally shrugs. Yeah, this checks out. Of course it does. They file it as a non-issue and tell me to call if it gets weird. I stand on my porch, watching the dust from their tires, thinking, if they're already calling the cops over this, what's next? National Guard? Couple days later, I take my drone out, routine flight, check for downed trees. That's when I spot it. 2 big blue floating platforms, canopy, stairs down to the water, 3 white tents on shore, a drainage mat, and a shiny sign. Hemlock Ridge Wellness Access Zone. Members only. They'd built a beachhead on my land, like it was a country club. I got it all on video. Anchors, hoses, the works. Pulled up the county GIS, plotted the coordinates. Yep, every inch of it right on my side of the line. I sent a formal complaint to DNR, CC'd the zoning folks and my lawyer, and then called Rick, neighbor, retired consultant, and all-around straight shooter. You're not gonna believe this, I told him. On my way with a 6-pack, he said. That's when DNR replied. Turns out, the HOA had applied for a lake permit, claiming historical use rights, and attached 2 letters from my grandfather, giving them access in perpetuity. Except my granddad never wrote a word like that. I went through every scrap of paper in his old file cabinet. Nothing. The signatures were laughable fakes, wrong spelling, wrong loops, everything. Next day, I filed a fraud report, included an affidavit, handwriting samples. Then, for good measure, I crashed their little clubhouse orientation, handed out flyers to everyone. and let them know they were paying dues for illegal access to a private lake. People started whispering. Judith stormed out, but I just smiled. Yeah, I know it's private property. I feel the same way every time you trespass on mine. By sundown, Hemlock Ridge folks were sending me emails, forwarding internal minutes, whistleblowing their own board. That's when I realized this wasn't just a bad misunderstanding. This was organized fraud. A week later, they taped a new violation notice to the door of my field office, a little storage shed on land I'd snagged cheap at a tax sale, which just so happened to sit right under their own HOA headquarters. The letter threatened daily fines unless I removed my unauthorized signage. Thing is, I owned that strip, office, parking lot, even the cable easement under their building. They'd been squatting there for 5 years, rent-free, never knew. So I called my attorney, checked the records, called a locksmith, and changed every lock before dark. Posted no HOA access signs, drafted a cease and desist. Sent certified letters, taped one to their front door myself. Next morning, I watched from across the street as a staffer read it, turned white as a ghost, and sprinted inside. That's when Frank, one of the older HOA guys, knocked on my door. "You really own this land?" he asked, shoulders sagging. "Every inch," I said. He shook his head, muttered, "Judith never told us that," and slunk away. After that, the gloves were off. At 4:30 the next morning, I get an inspection notice, pending violation, site review by the HOA, CC'd to the zoning board. Pure harassment, but clever. At 10 sharp, 3 SUVs roll in, 2 fake enforcement units, and a Channel 5 news van. Judith's out front, playing Joan of Arc with a clipboard, bossing guys in khakis around, taping, measuring, making a show of it for the camera. Reporter asks me about building codes. I say, "Show me the deed. Show me one document you own." They back off. That night, things got ugly. Security cam catches 2 figures, one in an HOA jacket, one with trash bags and a lighter, trying to set fire behind my office. I hit the alarm, scare them off, save the footage. One of the plates? Registered to Judith's husband. Filed criminal charges before breakfast. My lawyer, Meg, sharp as hell, said, "They're flailing." So I upped the ante. New signs, new cameras, everything backed up to the cloud. Then came the threats. Anonymous texts, warnings to sell while you still can. Think about what kind of man you want to be. I just forwarded them all to Meg and installed more floodlights. Let him try me. And just when I thought it couldn't get wilder, the HOA doubled down. Overnight, they put up an even bigger dock, banners, shower tents, rental kayaks, and a map splitting my lake into wellness zones. They were selling memberships like it was a spa retreat. I got it all on drone video, brand names, every corner. Filed everything with the county. Delivered a cease and desist to Judith with a sticky note. "Enjoy your wellness retreat while it lasts." But these folks, man, they don't learn. 2 days later, a neon orange sticker on my office door. Another bogus fine for noncompliance. Joke's on them. I bought that land in a foreclosure auction for $2,000, and it's the very ground their office sits on. So Meg drafts a formal eviction, 30 days to vacate, remove all structures, disconnect utilities, or face prosecution for trespass. Next morning, Judith sends a furious email. "You can't evict an entire community organization." My reply? "Watch me." Soon after, I'm standing in front of a judge, jeans and a clean shirt, while Meg lays out the case. Deeds, maps, drone footage, forged permits, fake inspection reports, all of it. Judith tries to spin it, talking about what the community deserves. The judge cuts her off. Deserve has nothing to do with deed property rights. The injunction comes down hard. Remove all HOA structures, no activity allowed on my property, or face contempt. Then it escalates. Fraud investigations, forged signatures, fake inspectors. The judge orders Judith detained right there in court. Meg leans over, grins, and says, "Well, that escalated beautifully." Yeah, that happened. In the weeks that followed, it was like dominoes. Whistleblowers from the HOA board turned state's evidence. Internal emails, payment logs, even a Zoom call where Judith called me a stubborn squatter and vowed to break him or bury him. Real classy. The judge froze their accounts, annulled the HOA charter, ordered restitution, over $330,000 in fraudulent dues and damages. Judith got 10 years in state prison, no parole for 5. The press swarmed the courthouse, but I kept it simple. Just held up a sign. Private property. HOA banned by court order. That sign's still up at every entrance to Hemlock Basin. Now I walk the lake. No more drones buzzing overhead. No more threat letters or fake fines. The old HOA office, mine now. Half of it's a conservation trust, the other half, a remote work studio and kayak shack for friends. As for the lake, it's peaceful again. Always was, always will be. And if anybody thinks they can bully their way onto my land now, well, let him call 911. I'll be waiting with the deed in one hand and the court order in the other. So tell me, what would you have done? Was I right to fight? Or is there ever a good reason for a neighbor to take what's yours and call it community? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because I know this one will stir up a few strong opinions.